For over 1,000 years, sailors swore that a monster the size of an island waited beneath the North Atlantic, rising in the dark to drag entire ships beneath the waves. Most people file that story away as a myth, a tale invented by frightened men on long voyages. But the strange truth is that the creature behind the legend was real the whole time. And the largest version of it stayed hidden the longest. We only saw one alive, in its own world, for the very first time last year. By the end of this, you will know exactly what the Kraken was, and why it took us so long to prove it. To understand the fear, you have to understand the place it came from. In Nordic folklore, the Kraken was said to haunt the cold seas stretching from Norway past Iceland all the way to Greenland. It was described as a beast so vast that fishermen mistook its back for a chain of islands, and so powerful that the swirling water it left behind could pull a wooden ship straight down. For centuries, there was no way to test the story. The deep ocean was simply beyond reach, a black wall that swallowed light a few hundred feet below the surface. Anything could live down there, and no one could prove it either way. So the monster survived, not in the water, but in the imagination, passed from one generation of sailors to the next. And for a long time, that is all anyone thought it was. The first crack in the myth came not from a living animal, but from a piece of one. In 1853, the remains of an enormous sea creature washed onto a beach in Denmark. Most of the body was lost, but a Norwegian naturalist named Japanese Steenstrup recovered something crucial from the wreckage. A beak. A hard, parrot-like jaw, far too large to belong to any animal then known to science. From that single piece, Steenstrup did something no storyteller had managed in 1,000 years. He gave the monster a real name. He called it Architeuthis ducks, the giant squid. For the first time, the Kraken had stepped out of legend and into the official record of science. But naming a creature is not the same as seeing one. Steenstrup had a beak and a description. What he did not have, and what no human would have for another 150 years, was proof of the animal alive. And that gap is the strangest part of this whole story. The giant squid is not small. Females can reach around 3 feet in length, about the size of a semi-truck, with 2 long feeding tentacles trailing behind a torpedo-shaped body. It carries the largest eyes in the entire animal kingdom, each one big enough to fill a dinner plate, built to gather the faintest trace of light in a place where there is almost none. An animal that large, with eyes that enormous, should be hard to miss. And yet for over a century, every giant squid humans ever touched was already dead. They washed ashore, or came up tangled in deep fishing nets, limp and gray and broken. No one had ever seen one swimming, hunting, alive in its own dark world. The most famous sea monster in history was, in a sense, still a ghost. That finally changed in 2004, off the coast of Japan. A Japanese research team led by Tsunemi Kubodera lowered baited cameras nearly 3,000 feet down into the deep water near the Ogasawara Islands and waited. What came back were the first images ever captured of a living giant squid reaching out of the darkness for the bait. The myth photographed at last, but still images only hinted at the creature. The real revelation came a few years later, in 2012, when scientists descended into the deep near the same Japanese islands and filmed a living giant squid in full motion for the first time. For generations, people had argued over what this animal even was. A slow, drifting ambush hunter? Or the fast, powerful predator of the legends? The footage answered the question. In its own element, the giant squid moved with purpose and speed, a controlled hunter sliding through the black water, exactly the kind of creature that could have terrified a sailor who glimpsed it breaking the surface. And yet, as impressive as it was, this was still not the largest monster hiding down there. Because the giant squid has an enemy. And the evidence of their war has been visible all along, written on the skin of another animal. Sperm whales dive thousands of feet into the dark to hunt these squid, and they do not always win cleanly. Whales surface again and again, carrying strange circular scars across their heads and backs, rings of torn skin left by the toothed suckers of a squid fighting for its life. Think about what that means. The old sailors who swore they had seen a great tentacled beast wrestling in the waves were not simply inventing horror stories. Somewhere beneath them, in water they could never reach, that battle was actually happening. The marks on the whales are proof. The monster was not only real, it was fighting creatures even larger than itself. And that brings us to the one that stayed hidden the longest. For all its fame, the giant squid is not the heaviest squid in the ocean. That title belongs to a different creature entirely, one that lives in the freezing waters around Antarctica, and one that scientists barely knew existed. It is called the colossal squid. And fittingly, the first time anyone learned of it, in 1925, it was not from a living animal at all. It was from 2 severed arms found inside the stomach of a sperm whale. For the next 100 years, that was almost all we had. A handful of damaged specimens, a few pieces pulled from whale bellies or tangled on fishing lines. The colossal squid is built like nothing else. It can weigh more than 1,000 pounds, far heavier than the longer giant squid, and on the ends of its tentacles, it carries rotating hooks that can swivel and tear. Its eyes are the largest known on the planet, wider than a soccer ball, evolved to spot a hunting sperm whale closing in through the dark before it ever arrives. And here is the payoff this whole story has been building toward. For an entire century after it was named, no human being had ever seen a colossal squid alive in its natural home. Not once. Then, in March of 2025, a remotely operated submarine drifting almost 2,000 feet down near the South Sandwich Islands caught something on camera. A young colossal squid, only about a foot long and nearly transparent, drifting calmly past the lights. A creature that had no idea humans even existed, filmed alive in the deep for the very first time, exactly 100 years after we first found its arms in a whale. So, does the Kraken exist? The honest answer is that it always did, just not in the shape the legends imagined. There was never a single beast large enough to swallow a ship. But there were, and still are, enormous tentacled hunters patrolling the deep, with eyes like dinner plates and hooks on their arms. Animals so elusive that proving them took us from a beak on a Danish beach in the 1800s to a living colossal squid filmed only last year. The sailors got the size wrong, and they got the shipwrecks wrong. But they were right about the most important thing. Something vast and strange really was down there in the dark the entire time, waiting to be seen. If you want to see what else the deep ocean has been hiding from us, the sounds it makes that scientists still cannot fully explain, that story is next. Subscribe and come deeper with us.